Want some tips on applying for your internship this year? Well, watch this video to find out. Hello YouTube, I'm Anthony, I'm the Career Doctor. I'm here to help you manage your medical career right here on YouTube. Today we're talking about internship because the opening dates for intern applications in Australia this year are about to open. They're all coordinated across the states and territories. So it's an exciting time if you're a medical graduate. Now, I was the medical director at HEDI, which is the New South Wales program that organises internships amongst many other things in New South Wales, where we allocated almost 1,000 interns every year. So I know a thing or two about the process, not just in New South Wales but around the country. So I'm going to give you a bunch of tips for this video, but I'd encourage you to watch to the end because I'm also going to link you to a key resource that can help you in a number of other ways. I've got together for you 8 tips to help you succeed and relax through this process, and we're going to dive right in right now. Tip number 1 is your medical intern number. You should have had one allocated if you're a final year medical graduate. They are allocated to all the medical schools and they're unique and they're there to help you apply for the system. You should be required to put it down when you apply to any of the state and territory internship allocation processes. They're necessary also when it comes to the time for registering with the Medical Board of Australia, and also they're used as part of what's called a national intern audit process, which helps keep the whole system running and making sure people aren't holding on to too many offers at one particular point in time. So if you haven't got your medical intern number, it's not your medical student number, by the way, and it's not your medical board number. It's a unique number that you're given in your final year. Talk to your year manager or your final year coordinator or head of school or someone at your school, and they should be able to help you out, and do that now. Now, tip number 2 is to know about the key dates for the medical internship process in Australia. As I said, it's coordinated across all states and territories, so there are actual dates that are aligned. First date you need to know about is the 8th of May, which is the date that all of the intern application systems open. And you've got a month to put your application in, by the way, because they close on the 7th of June. Which reminds me, every year, despite all the marketing, the activity by the state health departments, the medical schools, there seems to be 1 or 2 graduates who seem to have missed the message that you actually have to apply for your internship position. And if you don't get it in by the 7th of June, the consequences can be pretty dire. In most cases, you aren't allowed to put an application in late. So don't let you be one of those handful of people that have to miss out for a whole year because you weren't aware that you actually had to apply for a job. Now, tip number 3 is research the whole process. Do it now. In most cases, there's information up on the web for the various states or territories you want to apply for your internship for. It'll tell you the process for applying, the process of selection, any documents that you might need to gather, that sort of stuff. So be prepared. And then when those systems open on the 8th of May, go in and log in and register and make sure you can go through it as far as possible. You don't have to apply on the 8th of May, but just go through the system, make yourself aware of the process, what information you need to supply and what documents you may need to supply. You may be surprised about what sort of documents you need to supply, which brings me to tip number 4, which is be aware of the key documents you might need to have for your medical internship application. In most cases, you'll need to supply a CV or resume, not in New South Wales for most of the programs, but pretty much everywhere else. In a lot of cases, you'll need also nominate some referees and they'll have to fill in an online report or provide a reference. You may actually need to provide evidence of your high schooling or your English competency. That may surprise some people, but that does happen as well. So you'll need that key document. In some cases, if you've had a name change though, you might need to provide some information about that as well. By the way, if you're looking for tips around your medical student CV, I've done a video about that, and I'll put a link here or here and a link in the description for you as well. Tip number 5 is understand the priority lists. Each state and territory has a different variation on the priority lists. This is about a thing called the National Intern Guarantee, which basically says that every Australian citizen or permanent resident who's a medical student is guaranteed an intern position somewhere in Australia. And the way the states and territories generally do that is that they guarantee the medical students in their own state who are Australian citizens or permanent residents a place. And then they have a list to fill up the extra positions based on other priorities. So obviously the other groups that might be applying are medical students from other states, as well as international students who have studied in Australia. So you need to be aware of where you sit in the pecking order in each state and territory. It will vary because obviously you'll probably be number one if you're an Australian citizen or permanent resident in your own state, but a bit further down the list in other states if you're thinking of applying for them there. And if you're an international student and you're worried about getting a position, it might make sense to look at other states and territories and see whether there's a benefit in applying more liberally in your circumstance. So tip number 6 is you've done all your research and you know what you need to do to apply. The other part of research is obviously thinking about, where do I want to work in Australia as an intern? And you may be thinking about applying in more than one state, or you might be thinking about applying in states where there are a number of options. And so you're thinking about, which hospital do I want to go to the most? Now, when that situation comes up, often people think about, well, how can I maximize my opportunities? And if you're on the internet and talking to other medical students, you may hear advice about how you can manipulate the system by putting in certain preference orders and guarantee yourself better the hospital that you want to go to. Please don't listen to any of that advice. Having run one of these systems for 4 years, I can tell you it's not possible to game the system. The most that's going to happen out of doing something like that is you're actually going to guarantee yourself some other hospital or network that you didn't necessarily want to have. Yes, every year some people don't get their first preference. That's life. But you are much better off putting down the first hospital that you want to go to first, the second hospital you want to go to second, and in that order. That's the best way of guaranteeing yourself the best outcome for you. Tip number 7 is be available. Know those key dates when the offers come out. Also know about the fact that between the 7th of June and the 15th of July, when all the first offers come out, there's a period where you might need to be around to do an interview. So don't be away during those key times, and after the 15th of July when offers come out, you need to be available when those offers come out. Now, the way that the systems tend to notify you of an offer is via email, so you need to have access to the email that you put down. At the very least, make sure if you don't have access to it, someone you trust like your parents do, but better off, make sure you do have access to it. So think about whether you might be out of the country, all that sort of stuff, because you need to be able to swiftly accept your offer. In most cases, you've got 48 hours to accept an offer. Otherwise, it might be taken away and you've missed out for the whole year. Now, tip number 8 is a bit of a bonus tip. So the states and territories run a coordinated system, same date, aligning things, trying to keep all the intern positions free and available for as many people as possible. As an add-on to that, the Commonwealth government has been for some years running an additional intern system using the private hospitals. It's been to help international students get an intern position if they miss out. That program is available again this year. The details are, as per usual, a bit scratchy on the website at the moment because it tends to happen towards the end of this, but also the information can be a little bit light on. It's actually been rebadged to something called the, Junior Doctor Training Program Private Hospital Stream Program, which is a bit of a mouthful, but it's the Commonwealth Internship Program, and there are 115 spots available this year. You do need to be an international student to apply, but some people may not be aware of this as an additional option, so watch out for that Commonwealth Intern Program. Now, a quick small bonus for those international doctors watching this video is that apparently if those 115 positions aren't taken up by international students who've been doing medical school here in Australia, the private hospitals can then offer them to any other doctor who's eligible for provisional registration, meaning that international doctors who are going through the standard pathway process, so for example having the AMC Part 1 and the necessary English language requirements to be provisionally registered with the medical board, can apply for that program. But I would expect that there'd only be a handful that would be successful at that, and I would think it would be fairly competitive. But it is an option if you're looking for an option to get that first job in Australia. So there you go. 8 tips for helping you with your internship application. Now, remember at the start of the video I talked about an additional resource to help you with this process, so I've put together quite a lengthy blog post all about the tips and the other information with all the links to the various state and territory and Commonwealth internship portals guides, etc., information about the priority list where they're available. Some of the information is not as up to date in some states and territories as others. If there are updates, I will add them in over time, but I'll put a link to that post below for you. So there you go, 8 tips for your medical internship. Best of luck with all of that. As per usual, if you've got a question or a comment, please leave one below in the comments. And if you like the video, leave me a like, subscribe and turn on notifications, and I will see you in the next video.